Hey, good morning. So we are up to Shin Samach Beis Sivov. Sivov is a very short one, and it's no Mishnah Berurah on it, and it's basically a continuation of what we did yesterday. And that is, yesterday we were talking about the various materials you can use to make a mechitza, and one of the things that you can use, surprisingly, are human beings, are people. And that was what we spoke about yesterday. And then there was an opinion yesterday which said that they shouldn't know about it, because if these people know about it, it might come to be Mazalzel Shabbos. So Sivov continues and says the following: In Bo Mitchila Shelo Ledas. If these people, i.e., your human mechitzas, come along and they don't know that they're actually serving as a mechitza, they're just walking in a group, and then you think, hey, I've got a walking mechitza here. Even they don't know. Even if they afterwards realize that they're being used as a mechitza, ain't lochash, because since they didn't come to be used as a mechitza, then it's not a problem with Zilzal Shabbos, because that was not their intention when they set out for this. Even if they realize this later. Okay, good. Zayin. There's no Mishnah Berurah on that. Zayin. Yesh mi she'omer shelo ya'amid oisam adam shehu roitze lishtamish b'mechitza zu. There are those who say, "Shelo yamid oisam adam sheroitz l'shamash mechitza zu, ele yamid oisam acher shelo l'daitoi." That you shouldn't set up this mechitza if you know about it. Ele yamid oisam acher shelo l'daitoi. Let's just do the Mishnah Berurah to explain what it means. Membes shekashem shetzorich shelo yedu anoshim. Just like the people in serving as the mechitza shouldn't know shemamidim oisam lemechitza, that they're being used as a mechitza. Kach tzorich shelo yeda ha'ish shemamidim b'shviloi. The person who called them, who brought them together, also shouldn't know that they're functioning as a mechitza. B'shah shemamidim oisam. Avla achar shekvar huamdu. But once they've gathered there together, we're not worried about what they know. So in other words, there's not only to the people, like in the previous two seifim, they shouldn't know that they're being used as a mechitza, but even the person who brought them together say, guys, come, let's go, let's walk from place A to place B, and they're walking in in a formation of a mechitza where the person in the middle essentially is in a rishus hayochid, but even the person who called them over shouldn't know about it. That's this concern. Eliyamid oisam acher, says the Mishnah Berurah Mem Gimel. So there's somebody else should do it who doesn't know. Then a person can use that. Now the Rashba argues with it. Says the Mishnah Berurah. V'daitei shegam hu ba'alzam mutal amidam. He says no. Even the person who gathers them together can know that they're being used as a mechitza. Ve'in kpeidah rak al hanoshim ba'atzmon. And the only hakbada is on the people themselves who are being used as the mechitza, that they're not being used for this. And says the Mishmur, and that is the opinion we can rely on, and therefore we are lenient, and therefore even if the person gathered them together for this purpose, as long as the people themselves didn't know, that would be okay. He has a very interesting question. In footnote 19, take a look at that in footnote 19. Makaradin zeh u'medira Rambam. Who is this opinion that the Rashba is arguing with? It's the Rambam. V'hiksha mogen Avram shebe Gemara. The Gemara in Eruvin says mavur she'adam yochel lasos chavera doifen nesukah. He's got a great question. You're allowed to make a human being a doifen, a wall to your sukkah. V'chein posuk Rambam, and the Rambam himself says this. And there the Rambam has no requirement that the person being used as your mechitza wall in your sukkah doesn't know about it. So how come with Eruvin over here, the Rambam is particular that he doesn't know, and he wasn't put them there for that purpose, and here we're not makbid about it. And in sukkah we're not makbid. So both the Lechem Mishnah and the Tzofan Spanech, the Rogachover, they note this discrepancy in the Rambam. With sukkah for dvar mitzvah we're more lenient, and that's why the Rambam is more mekel. Ashenkein here for dvar rishus he's more strict. Okay, that's just a ha'ara. Now let's continue in the Mechaba. That says the Ramah. We're 3 lines from the end of Sivov, Shin Samach Beis Sivov. Ve'ein lasos mechitza shel bnei adam rak b'shas hatzorech. Even though technically you're allowed to make a mechitza with all different types of materials, even with Bnei Adam, you should only use Bnei Adam rak b'shas hatzorech or b'shas hatzchag, only in a real case of need and an extenuating situation. V'im shachach dovo echad b'shas rabim, and if you therefore forgot something in the Rus Rabim, rather than making a human mechitza, yoyse odif lahelich sham tinoikos sheaviu hadovash below mechitza melasus mechitza shabnei adam sheaviu gadol. Better to get a kid to go and collect this thing left in the Rus Rabim than to make a human mechitza. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mem Daled, lahelich sham tinoikos v'hu she'ein hatinok yodea shechevet zeh shel aviv. And you can only send the kid to go get this item if the kid doesn't know the item belongs to his father. And he's doing it for his own benefit. He thinks he's just found this thing in the Surabim. And Hari who mischavim min aslam ba'avosa b'shvil and is doing it to get it for his father, and therefore that would be a problem. If the kid knows that he's bringing this item from a Rabim for his father, then people should protest against the kid from doing it. And certainly you shouldn't assign him to go in the first place. And so too, if the item belongs to somebody else, and it's loved after his father, and the kid is bringing it for this other person, that's not allowed. But a father has an obligation of chinuch to rebuke his child and to stop him from carrying on Shabbos, even if the kid is doing it for himself. Even if it's a drabonon, and certainly you shouldn't ask him to go and get it, even if the item is not his. Okay, so Adkan. So that is the end of that little section of talking about materials you can use for a mechitza. Now we're going to carry on with some famous halachas. Maybe this is familiar to us from Maseches Sukkah or Hilchos Sukkah, but you'll see some of this stuff will be quite familiar, I hope. Porutz Merubeh al ha'omed. So we know there is a concept in Hilchos Eruvin and Hilchos Sukkah that a wall, there are two types of wall. There's an omed, there's the actual physical wall, and there's something called porous, which means the gap, the breach. But sometimes the breach is not a problem. For example, if it's within 3 tefachim, if you've got an upright and you've got a gap of less than 3 tefachim, we say lovet, and we treat that porous, as if it's omed. So now we're going to discuss some of these halachas, because again, the Shin Samach Beis is talking about all different types of mechitzas. That's why it's here. Porutz merubeh al ha'omed. If you've got a breach, a gap, which is bigger than the omed, the wall part. Now here you've got to jump over 2 pages. The footnotes go to town over here, but we're not going to be doing, most of them are just a detail in the Chaznish. Anyway, Porutz merubeh al ha'omed asa. So if you've got a gap which is merubeh al ha'omed, that is a problem. Elim kain kol piritz mehem pechus mishlesh tefachim. Unless the breaches, like I just said, the gaps are less than 3 tefachim, because then you apply loved and you haven't got a problem. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Memhei, afilu shtei mechitzos. Even if you've got, now this is a little bit tricky, afilu shtei mechitzos shleimas. Even if you've got 2 whole walls, v'gam ha'dofen sheba halechi ha'atzuros ha'pesach hasuyin kedin. And even if you've got a wall where the lechi, the upright reminder at the front of it, or Hatzuras HaPesach, where you've got a 2 verticals and a horizontal, Hatzuras HaPesach, Asuya Kedin, of a Mechitza HaShlish is Hoya Porutz Merubeh, and on the 3rd wall, it's Porutz Merubeh. Nevertheless, Nechshav Oisa Mechitza commandless. So we look at that Mechitza as if it's not there. Vafilu Keneged HaOmed Nechshav Kaparetz, and even the bit, which is opposite the Omed, is considered opposite a gap. And it turns out all you've got is 3 mechitzas, because we discount the 4th one. But if it would be omed merubah, then you've got 4 mechitzas. Even if it's only omed merubah on 2 sides, mitzdarfim ahadodi or mispatil haparis lagaba, that would be they join together and they would be mevatel the parrots. Good. Even if the omed is not It's not full, it's not complete. Eliyesh b'chol echod gam kein pirza. There are little gaps in the omeid. Elisha omeid rabba. It's just that there's more omeid. Nechshav alidei zeh ki'ilu kulei omeid u'misbat la'paratz shebe'emtza. That is the effect of it. We discount the little gaps and we treat it as if it's kulei omeid. It's a proper hard wall. For example, you've got a wall which is 15 amas long. Now this is picture number 22. All right. So if you put one finger on the picture, one finger on what we're going to do now, he's describing this wall. So you've got an opening there of 15 amas. Right. That's the front opening. V'nisha b'ktzei ha'koisel amma, and you've got an amma wall on the beginning of the opening. V'nifretz amma, then a gap of an amma. V'nisha omed shnei amas, and then you've got a little wall there of 2 amas. Etzlo pirtz gedola shel shiva amas, and then you've got an opening of 7 amas. Ve'etzlo omed shnei amas, and then you've got a little wall of 2 amas. V'oid pirtz amma, and then a gap of an amma. V'oid pas amma b'ktzei ha'sheni shel ha'koisel, and then an amma on the other side of the wall. Right. So he's just described picture number 22. Now, what that looks like, pretty much, that's pretty Porutz Merubeh, right? That's what it looks like. But actually, that is a perfectly good wall. Why? Why? Because look on the left-hand side, you've got an amma, and then you've got a gap of an amma. Well, we discount that amma, and therefore it's as if you've got a wall of 4 ammas on the left-hand side. And so too on the right-hand side. So you've got 2 walls of 4 plus 4 is 8 ammas with a gap of 7 in the middle. It's omed merubeh Porutz.
Why can we get rid of that amma?
Why can we?
Yeah.
Because it's Loved dictates that it is discounted because it's in between 2 omeids.
Is an amma bigger than Loved? Is an amma shorsh?
I see you're right. It's not because of Loved. You're quite right. It's not because of Loved, but you'll see soon. There are some times where we say that on a horizontal. Hold off a second, because you'll see in our horizontal, when you have the ropes going round, then or in a sort of horizontal mechitza, sometimes there are other factors at play which discount us using that omeid. Avir Shetachtov and Gedim Beikin we'll see in a second. But here, you're right, it's not Loved, but we're invoking the fact that it's, I guess, between 2 amudim, and therefore we treat that Porutz is negligible, because it's in between 2 omeids which are bigger than it. So therefore the omeid is merubeh Porutz, and therefore that's considered a full wall. So you've got 4 on one side, 4 on the other side, and 7 in the middle. So you're okay.
How do we treat the 7 in the middle?
It's because it's less than 10. It's not considered a Porutz, and it's considered a Pesach, like just an opening, like a doorway, an entranceway. Okay, Pechus. Yeah. Pechusa. What's that going on? Elim came Pirtz Merubeh mehem Pechus mishleish tvachim. So so long as the gaps in between are going to be less than 3 tvachim, then you're going to be okay. To have a Loved, and therefore any gap less than 3 tvachim, we invoke Loved, and therefore it's as if it's properly omeid. And therefore, even if there was a big opening, a big gap, that it's 11 amas wide, and you've got a breach of 5 amas. And you've got the other 6 amas. In other words, you've got an opening of 11 amas, and you've got a gap of 5, and you've got 6 amas, which are basically you invoke Loved on those 6 amas. You've got verticals within 3 tefachim of each other. It's as if you've got 6 amas of proper wall, and that is more than the 5 amas of pirza, and therefore it's going to be okay. Mishleish tvachim, after the Porutz ka'omed mavur b'siv talad. When it's in the next sieve, we're going to talk about where it's Porutz ka'omed, where it's exactly 50-50. Mavur b'siv tes. In the next sieve, the ad esa amas nechshav lePesach, which is what we just said. Up to 10 amas is considered just a pure opening. But Porutz merubeh afira de pirza shashleish tvachim gamkein also mishum da'omed mispatzel legabo. If you've got gaps of more than 3 tvachim, then you're not going to be invoked Loved, and therefore you're going to be the pirza will be mevatel the omeid. Okay, Tess. Now, what if it's 50-50? So we just said now in Ches that if it's Oimed Merubeh, if it's Porutz Merubeh la Oimed, then it's a problem, then it's Asa. But if it's 50-50, Porutz ka Oimed, if it's exactly the same, Muta, then you're okay. Bein b'shasi, whether it's vertical poles, Bein b'erev, whether it's horizontal. Or bilvad shelo yehi b'mokum echad Porutz yosim e'esa. So long as the pirza is not more than 10 amas, aval ad ese amas, but up to 10 amas, Muta mipnei sheika pesach, because it's treated like just an opening to that area. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah Memches. Porutz ka'omed muta. The lo tzarich sheyehei ha'omed merubeh la porutz. It doesn't have to be that the omed is more, but 50-50 is treated like omed merubeh. Afilim shovinheim, even if they're equal, gam kein muta kiven she'ein ha'porutz merubeh, because at the end of the day, the gap is not bigger than the omed. Va'afilu keneged ha'porutz muta l'taltal, and even opposite the breach, you're allowed to carry. The yesh al zeh din mechitza shlema. It's treated as halachically as a proper wall. Bein b'shasi, whether it's vertical, she'omed al gabi karka b'goiva, v'yesh chalolim rechovim b'toich ha'mechitza, ad she'aporutz hu shova la'omed, and the gaps are such that the breaches equal the omed, or bein be'erev, da, the kol mechitza tzorich shelo yehei b'tachdisoy chalal shleisha tvachim. And this is what I was referring to, Eli. That you should know that all this discussion about omed merubeh porutz and 50-50 is okay. That's only shelo b'tachdisoy, that underneath it, when we're talking about a horizontal wall, there's a horizontal, there's a gap underneath. That's talking there is no gap chalal shleisha tvachim. Im hoylo chalal shleisha tvachim is if you have a gap of 3 tvachim or more, afilu lemalo, even at the top, also hashiva tvachim below shum chalal the nimsa shemin merubeh porutz. You've got a situation where you can have a wall where you've got to have a wall of 10 tefachim, but you can have 7 omeds and 3 paras, and you think, hey, no problem, omed merubeh porutz, I'm going to be okay. But that's not the case. So if you've got a gap at the bottom, that ruins your wall, because it's called a gap which is Gedian Boikenbo. Goats can come in and can sneak in under the wall, so you can have as much lomdus as you want to say that Omed Merubeh porutz and this is considered the wall, but at the end of the day, if it's more than 3 tefachim, this is it falls foul of Gedian Boikenbo. V'chein, and so too another problem. Imam Achitza, if the mechitza underneath hoyagova shisha tvachim, v'hirchik shleisha tvachim, and then you have a gap of 3 tvachim, shleimim, v'hemid lemala oid pas, and then you put another beam on top, v'shlim lasor tvachim. So you've got 6 tvachim, a gap of 3, and then 1 tefach of solid. Gam kein lo mahani, that's also no good. Afsha omed merubeh porutz, even though you've got more omed than porutz, you've got 7 against 3. The osi avir, what's the problem? The osi avir shel chalal sheish tefachim shetachas hapas, the gap of 3 tefachim which is underneath the top beam comes along. Va'avir shel lemala min hapas, and the airspace above that pas ad l'rakia, which goes all the way to the heaven, u'mevatli lepas shebe'emtza, and it's mevatel the pas shebe'emtza. So again, there are certain rules which one has to be aware of. So even though, in other words, omed merubeh porutz is not a hard and fast rule, there are situations which could scupper it. So the 2 that is given so far are that if you've got a gap of more than 3 underneath, even though you've got 7 tefachim above it, you might have thought that's okay. Kamash manon the Gedian Boikenbo. So too, if you've got 6 omeds, a gap of 3, and 1 pass going across, I thought, hey, that's 7 against 3, no problem. No, because you say there's a concept of that avir underneath the pass and the avir above it combine to be mevatel that pass. So just to be aware, there are the rules in play. V'chein, on the beginning of the third wide line. V'chein im osel lematzah b'tachdisoy shleisha tefachim. If you've got a gap of 3 tefachim at the bottom, v'chein lemala shleisha tefachim, u'be'emtza nisha reichav arba tefachim chalal. So, for example, you've got a gap of 3, 4 omed, and then 3 above it. Af shebesach hakol yesh omed shel shisha tefachim. Sorry, I was saying it the wrong way around. Im Osem lematza tachtis shlish tvachim, v'chein amal shlish tvachim, v'em zanish al-reichel arba tvachim chalal, other way around. You've got 3 tvachim, and then you've got a gap of 4, and then you've got 3 tvachim. So you've got 6 oimed against the gap of 4. I'd have thought that's okay. Af shebesach hakol yesh oimed sheshes tvachim merubeh hu al chalal shebentayim. Lo yemav mechitza. That is not a valid mechitza. Why? Again, to osi avira de lamala v'avira abra tvachim shebeemza u'mevatle shlish tvachim. The gap of that avir in between and the avir above the top oimed combines, and it's mevatel the top oimed. Avalim also lamala abot tvachim. But if you do 4 tvachim above, over tachtisay shleish tvachim, and at the bottom you do 3, over emsa nisha shleish tvachim chalal, and you've got a gap of 3. Bezer lo yamrina damina mevatel leya arba tvachim oimed shlemalo she'achri shemerubeh lavir shetachtov ein yochel avir levatloi. If the gap is 4, the oimed is 4, and underneath it is 3, then we don't invoke this principle of osi avir mevatle. The other Rabbi, on the contrary, ha'avir bottle legabei, uchilu sosum kula damin, as if it's closed up. V'hinei bezeh atzir shetziyanu ha'omed merubeh laporutz. In this depiction of how we've had omed merubeh laporutz, or porutz ka'omed, lo mishkachas lo be'erev. You don't actually find this in the case of erev. K'misha kusavnu bi'alocha. Just technically, it doesn't work in the case of erev, where it's a horizontal. And therefore the lashon of the mechaber just emerges from the lashon of the tur. And therefore the whole concept of porutz ka'omed is going to be one that applies to shesi and not to erev. Or mishum shesi nokta, and he said it because of shasi, but he just he sort of threw it in for erev as well. Although it doesn't have an application for erev. In a horizontal. V'teida the piskei arosh leikosav shamrak ba'emin ruban aparetz matzav erev. That I'll prove it to you because the Rosh, the father of the Torah, writes only ba'emin ruban aparetz is mutzah erev, i.e., but if it's equal, it wouldn't work. V'ayim v'halocha. Okay, let's just finish off. Shelo yehei. This is nun aleph. What was that? Nun aleph. Bilvad shelo yehei b'mokum echad parutz yosemi eses. As long as you haven't got a breach of more than 10. Because if you've got a breach of more than 10, it's as if you haven't got a wall there. Even though you could have lots of omed, you can have 100 meters of omed, but if you've got a gap of 10, that destroys your wall. So it's up to and including 10 amos is okay, but more than 10 is going to scupper your wall. Okay, say that.